Tonight, fears of violence in a dark sequel to January 6th on a nationwide scale. The New York Times is reporting that right wing groups are flocking to Telegram to coordinate or at least encourage intimidation at polling places across the country. And in other cases, outright advocating for violence. I have to say, Jonah, this is actually, I think, the thing that I am the most concerned about is that uh, there are people who might find that maybe not even polls on election days, but in the days after, as the votes are still being counted, that intimidation is the strategy that they want to go.
Yeah, I think there's no disputing that there are groups of scummy dudes, jabronis, weirdos, who are going to try to exploit this for all their own purposes, and I don't think it's unreasonable to expect that Donald Trump will not be incredibly helpful in his rhetoric and all that. But it is important to take a step back and realize we almost literally cannot have a replay of January.
Yeah.
The law has been changed to make the legislative maneuver much, much more difficult. And Donald Trump is not the sitting president of the United States, so he doesn't have the ability to influence events the way he did before. Do I think if he loses, will he claim it was stolen? Absolutely. Yeah. Will that be dangerous and contemptible? Absolutely. But it's a manageable problem, even though any violence is just outrageous. And there could be, on the other hand, there could be violence from the left if Trump wins. I mean, who knows? And you should have zero tolerance for it, regardless of the ideological thing.
I agree. I think the only exception I would say to what you just mentioned is that there is some concern that if Republicans keep the House and Mike Johnson oversees the certificate, it has been unclear. I mean, he has said, I'll certify the election. If the election is a free and fair and safe, there's always been these like caveats and workarounds, and I think there has been some concern that if Trump does lose, what will he do if Republicans keep the House? But we don't need to be like this. Like, we are in a democracy. We don't have to be all sunshine and gummy bears, but we should be able to go to our ballots, cast our ballots. The election workers should feel safe walking from their car to their office and back without security. We should let the votes be counted, and whatever the will of the people has spoken, whether it is what I want or not, that is democracy.
And I think it's important to note that people should feel safe going. This will be a fair and free election. People's voices will be heard. People's votes will be counted, no matter how long it takes. And people need to go tomorrow. Everyone who has not voted yet will go tomorrow, and everyone should go vote tomorrow and have your voice heard. That is your power, and everyone should feel empowered to go into the ballot box and to have their voice heard. This kind of news, Abby, about how right-wingers are out there and the election workers now have panic buttons, I mean, I think that's great, but I think it's a sad day where that actually is what we need. I think this is another proof point about what Americans feel like. They're sick and tired of this, political division and the hatred and the violent rhetoric coming from the other side, which is why we want to turn the page.
It may not be, to your point, Jonah, that Trump is directing all of it, but let me just read a little bit more from the Times reporting. In New Hampshire, one Telegram channel instructed people to question local officials in person about absentee ballot tallies. In Georgia, followers of a local Telegram channel were urged to attend election board meetings to argue for limits to absentee voting. And in New Mexico, people were told to monitor voting stations with cameras, file police reports if necessary, and be ready to, quote, fight like hell. So it's kind of diffused. It's all over the country, and maybe these are all people just acting of their own accord. But they're doing that because Trump spent the last 4 years ceding the ground, and honestly, he's been doing it even tonight.
Mm-hmm. Another question?
Well, I mean, I wonder what.
Look, I think
why is Trump tonight even talking about stolen elections? If this
listen,
is water.
let me first say, of course, no one wants violence. From the left, I remember when Trump got elected in 2016. I remember there was a little bit of rioting, not widespread, but there was an assault and there was yelling and screaming, even at myself and my then girlfriend. But listen, no one wants violence. No one wants anyone intimidated. We want Americans to be able to go and exercise their constitutional right and select the next president of the United States and the direction of this country and indeed the world. That said, I know that you're mentioning the Telegram channels, and I assume that law enforcement is monitoring them. And I do want to say, because I think this is important, because it kind of gets conflated a little bit. and you may not like Donald Trump's rhetoric or something like that, but legally, he can contest, and so can anyone if they see something wrong anywhere around the country. They can contest things that may be awry legally for the vote. But I want to foot stomp this again. Everyone should feel safe. They should be able to exercise their right to vote, of course. And then, in the end, as you said, once everything's counted and the winner is decided, then there should be a peaceful transfer of power, of course.
I just think we should follow the laws, which means, and the laws and the process exist to protect every single person's franchise. And that means going to the polls and voting. It means during the counting process. It means during the certification process. It means during the process by which the electors get transmitted to Congress. There is a machinery that gets put in place here, and it's a beautiful, magical thing, this interaction between our federal system and our state system, and the diffused nature of our elections, which fully depends on these volunteers and local municipal officials and county clerks and secretaries of state. It is a beautiful thing because it does protect us from any central person being able to upend the whole thing. So I'm with Jonah. I have zero tolerance for any kind of violence. I did see they were boarding up windows in Washington, D.C. today, which, there's not too many Trump supporters down there. But the bottom line is, this machinery was designed by really smart people, and it has served us well for almost 250 years. And I think if everyone would respect the laws of the machinery, we'll be just fine.
Yeah, especially if that everyone is Donald Trump.
Yep.
Everyone else, hang tight. Coming up next, RFK